Thanks for tuning in to episode 198 of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. In this episode, we're diving into why you shouldn't try replicating the cafe experience at home behind your home coffee bar. Now, it's very oftentimes that we hear folks say, I just want my coffee at home to taste just like it did at the coffee shop. Now, there might not be anything wrong with that. However, that also might not be the best mindset and approach to take as you're brewing coffee at home. There are things related to coffee and things unrelated to coffee that can highly impact your experience of the cup in your hands. And we're diving into that in this episode. Let's get into this. My name is Mark Kotrovsky, and I lead the podcast with Sergey Kotrovsky. We're two brothers that run a coffee roastery out of the small town of Bellingham, Washington, up in the Pacific Northwest. I've been roasting for the last 5+ years and enjoying the heck out of it. But yeah, we've been doing this podcast for a few years now. I mean, almost since the beginning.
Yeah,
almost.
It's gonna be 5 years. 4 years.
Yeah.
It's 4 years about.
Yes, that sounds about right. So, but yeah, as we've always been doing, let's pour some batchy.
Let's do it.
Before we get into this episode. And
oh, this coffee's super fresh. It's also toasty.
It's hot.
The brew is like so hot.
Piping.
Yeah.
Even though it's been sitting for, not too long, but for 10 minutes or so. But
right.
I don't know.
Is it super fresh? Am I crazy?
Mm-hmm. You're crazy.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe it's just.
It just. Do you taste that texture on it? The first thing. This is so weird, and I think it's just how my brain processes information, but the texture on it reminds me of shrink wrap, like when you remove shrink wrap off of a box. This is the first thing that pops into my mind. It's the coffee itself is very like crispy. It has like very nice acidity on it, and I think that's where the crispiness of the acidity with the texture and the mouthfeel of the drink makes it feel like that plastic shrink wrap on a box that's reflective, that's shiny, but when you take it off and you crinkle it, you know that feeling you get? That's the feeling I'm getting off of this coffee.
It's almost a month off roast.
Wow. That's incredible.
So.
But it has that.
I don't know what that.
Feeling that I similarly associate with fresh coffees. Yeah. It could be like also confirmation bias because this morning I brewed the Alto on the Aiden like a week off of roast, right? Mm-hmm. It's about a week off of roast, the cupping samples that we have. So it had that same texture. Same. Like everything's there, everything's nice, but the texture was slightly off.
Maybe it's a batch brew thing. Or maybe I think I grind a little too coarse on this.
Oh.
I think.
You think it's slightly under?
I do. I think it could use a little more. I don't know.
Isn't that a weird?
But it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is nice. This is in the ballpark. But this is the Via Toro that we have. So it makes sense that you taste the same thing.
Okay.
Maybe it's just like a coffee.
Maybe it's a coffee texture thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense now. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's wild. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's got, it's nothing out of the ordinary, nothing crazy, but it's a very nice, solid coffee. Just, a little bit of stone fruit, a little bit of nice lingering that Guatemalan acidity coming through. I'm not sure. That's like a citrusy or appley, grapey. I don't know.
There's also a new flavor on this coffee that I haven't had before. It could be along the lines of what we talked about was like either dry fruit or like dark fruit on it because it's like all the way in the back.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say like this.
Maybe a little bit of like honey.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
I could see that.
Maybe I'm confusing this too much with the Jorge coffee, which gives me a lot of honey vibes. But
it's wild. It's just wild right now. I'm kind of blown away by the fact that what you brewed is a month off a roast, and what I brewed was like probably a week. And again, like, I hate to be that guy, but I'm enjoying this way more than what I enjoyed this morning. And again, I don't know if that's. I also you brewed on the cone.
Yeah.
Okay, I brewed on the big one. I do 1 liter.
Yeah.
So it was a very big batch. So that could also be the difference.
I think the cone makes a big difference on the 8. Well, in any brewer.
Yeah.
In general, which maybe a podcast episode for another time, but yeah. So folks, if you want to pick up some tasty coffees, we just dropped a handful of different coffees. Dropped 2 or 3 or 4 Colombian coffees, an Ecuador coffee from Juan Peña, and some good stuff. Yeah. I'm going to be dropping another coffee probably this week, which is the Lasso that we've tasted. Lots of great, fresh, new coffees that are just very tasty that I've been enjoying, and would strongly recommend. So, same. Like it's like very strong. Like I don't want to be annoying and biased and toot my own horn, so to speak, but I'm enjoying all of these coffees very equally. And
I'm proud to say that I feel like the last few drops that we've had, and when we talked about him on the podcast episode, I kept saying, well, this is our best lineup yet.
Right.
And I think that one, I don't want to be that guy and don't want to just talk so good about ourselves. But the reality is I'm just super proud of the work we've done in especially the last year. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible, from sourcing to our roasting to hey, if you've been with us from day one, I think it's also a very big, should be a very big thanks to you. I think of our friends like Alex Wallace, very big thanks for you for drinking our coffee from day one and literally going on this progress journey. So I'm super stoked on this menu. Yeah. Well done.
Cool. Well, sweet. Let's get into this. Serge, what do we have on the docket today?
Well, I was doing the whole Reddit thing a few weeks ago, and came upon this post that really puzzled me. Sometimes I go on Reddit for market research. Only a couple of posts, our Bellingham post I follow for entertainment, because you see the wildest stuff.
Yeah, but the Bellingham Reddit's wild. It's wild. So crazy.
Dude, the sloth mania right now is insane. Dude, but anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, so I'm going on the thread and kind of trying to see what's the buzz about, what are people talking about. And this one home barista posted this, not really a question, but this, I guess, question observation thing that said, hey, I've done everything to replicate a brew at this cafe. I'm tight with that cafe. I actually brought my grinder. I brought my dripper. I poured it, everything, replicated everything to the T in this cafe. And the weird thing is, when that person goes home and starts brewing coffee, again, in the same exact way, it doesn't taste the same. And not just there's something off. It's it's to the point where that person was saying are these 2 different coffees? So I, wrote some feedback, kind of chatted. The thread got pretty big. There's 100+ comments or something like that on it. And anyway, the more I thought about it, the more I responded, the more the question that continued to linger in my mind is, why do we often pursue replicating a cup of coffee that we've had in the cafe? We try to replicate it at home. And what is the motivation behind that? Because I also did a poll, and you and I have talked about this a lot. The home baristas that we talk about usually say that their coffee tastes better at home, but there's this still comparison to the cafe experience. And I think there's a lot to unpack when it comes to that. And that's why maybe this is a hot take, maybe it's not a hot take, but I think we should stop trying to replicate our cafe experience or try to mimic the cafe experience or think or have the mentality that like my coffee should be quote unquote as good as a cafe. What do you think?
I think,
is that crazy?
No, I think as you were saying that, more my mind goes was there's different levels, and I don't want to make this into like a hierarchy, like beginner, intermediate, pro. Like that's not the point. I think if you haven't watched last podcast with Jay Kim, who was one of the founders of the UFO Dripper, really great episode. There's so much that you can take from that episode and kind of transfer in here, but I think like if you're just starting out, that's probably all you have to compare to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you just got your first V60, you got your first gooseneck kettle,
Yeah.
You bought a local bag of beans. You used to buy beans and used to just put them in the drip coffee maker, your Mr. Coffee or whatever, or your mocha pot, and that's it.
Yeah.
But now you're like, I want to get serious. I want to get into this hobby. I think it's normal to compare yourself to the cafe because you're like, well, they're brewing the same coffee and I want to brew it on their level because I think there's a lot of also for the last several decades, this notion of the cafes where you get the best quality, where you get the best cup, where you go to the cafe where people are trained, they have the equipment, which now is shifting. There's a lot of dynamics that are shifting, but they have the commercial equipment, the commercial grinders, the commercial this, commercial that, and they're being paid to do this work. Like they're trained commercial or they're trained professionals. And to a certain extent, I mean, that is true. I mean, if you go to a cafe, you should be getting the best cup of coffee ever. And we've talked about this, but you're paying for somebody's expertise to create something for you. It should be good for sure. And so I think when you're starting off, you will be comparing maybe your brews to what you're getting at the cafe and saying, hey, is it worth it making my coffee at home? And can I achieve the same tasting, especially if you love your local cafe? You're going to compare it to it. But however, I think once you have a little bit of experience brewing coffee at home, that quickly disappears. Because
for sure,
I don't think you're anymore thinking, okay, how do I make a cup of coffee that tastes similar to the cafe? Because, well, it tastes similar, if not probably better. And now you're looking at a bunch of other stuff. And so at that point, I think if you're listening and you've been in the hobby, you're still learning, but you're fairly newish, I think you're 100% right that you should not be comparing your cup of coffee at home to the coffee at the cafe for multiple reasons, which I think we'll talk about. But one of them is just that you can make a tastier coffee at home.
Exactly.
with the right tools and everything. But anyways.
No, that's really good. I'm glad you said that because I still do agree that cafes do set the tone or should set the tone that is a point of reference for a lot of people, especially folks who are in the beginning stages of brewing coffee at home, who are buying gear and starting to understand why does a conical, a conical Barista grinder is different than a flat. They're getting that. So there is this level of almost like a formal comparison, like a frame of reference. Right? I don't think that will ever change. But I think because of that, there is this placebo or nocebo effect where if that's the epitome of what a coffee should taste like or the experience of drinking a coffee, then I idolize it so much. And when I get home, it's just not the same. It's like you have something on a pedestal so high that it's impossible to replicate it because you can't objectively think about it. And that's where I'm like, okay, so if we reframe that and say, well, how about we stop trying to do that? And how about we unpack? How does your coffee taste in the cafe? Okay, this. How do you experience coffee in the cafe? Oh, this. What are the elements within that make that experience so special or make that coffee taste so good? And one of the things, like a lot of people always say, I mean, Jay said this too. It's like, you go to a coffee shop for people, for the atmosphere, for the experience. And I think that is the key. It's like, oh, you enjoy drinking coffee here. For some reason, coffee tastes good. Like people say, well, coffee tastes better with latte art. Well, that's partially true.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Why? It's because the experience is the elevated experience is what's actually making the coffee taste good. And if that's the case, don't try to quote unquote mimic the cafe, but think about the things that you enjoy. For example, for me, I really enjoy burning an incense while making coffee, which people may critique like, well, isn't the aroma of that getting in the way? Yes, of course it is. I know that. I would never do that in a cupping, right? But because I enjoy the ritual of it, the experience of it, it makes my coffee bar at home, the atmosphere of my coffee bar at home, feel much better than a cafe. Why? Because you can't burn a candle in a coffee shop while you're making coffee. That's just not. There's some things like, I remember I couldn't even have some flowers in the cafe. Like I love plants and flowers. There's some things I can't have in the cafe that I absolutely love that benefit my coffee bar that I can't have in a cafe because of allergies, right? Or if you have a pet, you can't go into a coffee shop, brew your pour over with your cat on your shoulder. Right? So what I'm saying by that is, oh, you enjoy these elements of the atmosphere of a cafe. Stop comparing and start creating something that you absolutely love at home on your home coffee bar that a cafe can't provide. And then you can actually experience both and enjoy them both on the same level. And I think that's part of the picture of why coffee can then taste better at home. Do you follow that train of thought? I know that was kind of wild, where I went from a cat sitting on your shoulder to coffee tasting better at home. But it's that atmosphere, and humans value the atmosphere of something that we experience on the regular. That's what makes it better. That's why we go to cafes.
How do you break that down into how do you feel atmosphere impacts how your coffee tastes?
It's the mental thing, right? Because if you can make, it's the experience behind the coffee. Not only, and by experience, I'm not talking about not only what you taste on the palate, right? But what you experience about it. And one of the key elements to that is, for example, if you're drinking a geisha, like this competition, Macave State, let's say, like absolutely banger of a coffee. Drinking it in a shed with fresh cut grass, old lawnmower sitting there, dim lighting, it's a vibe. It's going to taste different. Your experience of that coffee is going to be much different than if you go in to a Nordic style cafe somewhere in Europe, or you've been to Italy and you've experienced the same coffee. And I get that is a mental thing. And I think that's something to actually understand. It's like, oh, the comfort of this cup, the actual flavor of this cup is impacted because of where I'm at in the experience, not the extraction percentage all the time. See what I mean? And I think that's only one facet of why we're so fascinated about replicating the cafe experience at home. And we're like, I don't have that same picture on the wall. It doesn't taste the same. So I think there's a little bit of validity of truth. And of course, I'm exaggerating the point here, but I think it does play a role.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it necessarily will impact your flavor notes, but there is definitely something outside of just solely flavor notes, that it'll impact in terms of, I think this is a little bit more out of the box of your experience of the coffee, not necessarily, like in one place you're going to get, orange peel, and in another place it's going to taste more like lemon. Even though sure, I think like some of the stuff that you mentioned, like if you're burning incense or if you have fresh cut grass, like those will probably actually literally impact your experience. So, which I don't know, I guess this could play the other way around, is be aware of what's around in your environment.
100%.
Like, if you somebody actually on Reddit actually pointed this out, was like, hey, think about even the stuff that you're eating before.
Correct.
And I was like, interesting. Like that is true. Sometimes, if you just had like bacon, orange juice, and eggs and Cholula hot sauce, like might not be a good idea to like drink a geisha after there that you've been freezing for years.
Exactly.
And I guess a similar thing where it's like, how your space inside, some of the contents or how it smells or how it's taken, will impact a lot stuff outside of the flavor experience, but can creep into the flavor experience.
And that's why I think that's why it's like the key is to recognize that, just stop replicating the cafe experience. Create your own, right? Whether you want to always drink a geisha after eating bacon, you can do that at home. You can't do that in the cafe. Or you want to make sure the whole, I think it was either Lance or someone else was saying like they were actually controlling the amount of humidity in the room to make sure that their results were the same. And that's the other part. One, yes, we just talked about the experimental part. The other is your actual brewing. This is a little more on the technical side now. Your actual brewing experience or your brewing results, the environment will impact that. Jay mentioned about the whole AC thing, and I 100% agree. There's a much bigger difference when you're brewing pour overs, and I'm talking about a specific cafe here, and you have the AC that's above it cooling down your brewers and your slurry, and you can actually see the paper filter move from the AC going on. It's 100% going to impact that. 100%. And then humidity levels, the changes of the door opening and closing, 100% going to impact your coffee actual brewing, your coffee brewing, because of the environment is always changing. The amount of people that walk through the door, there's just less control. And that's why it is very key to understand that when you're in a cafe or when you experience coffee in a cafe, the barista, the artist, the technical professional of making your coffee has to consider those things. Why? We always talk about on bar is that, if there's a big rush, you're going to see grind size have to shift, right? You're probably not going to have that big rush at home, right? Yep. So the professional is always technically creating your flavor experience of the coffee in an environment, especially in a high traffic cafe. They're doing the best with their environment. That also doesn't mean that the best possibility of the flavor of the coffee can't be experienced at home. As a barista, I knew that I had to dial in coffee in a way that would reveal as much as high of capacity of like the return on investment to bar flow, to repeatability. Like I'm going to serve 100 plus people. I need to make sure this coffee doesn't just hit the dial, but is good within this range, because I need to make a lot of drinks. And same thing with pour overs. Like even I remember developing a recipe for a pour over. I had to understand that this recipe, the reason it exists is so that I can make 2 at a time, right? So you have to make those changes. And in competition, it's the same thing. Like I don't just want to make a single best cup. I need to serve 3 judges. So I need to make a recipe that will make this coffee taste the best, but for 3 judges at once. And I've heard someone say, and I don't know if it was Jay or someone else, I've heard someone say before, like, the best cup of coffees aren't served in comp.
Yeah.
They're really, really good.
Yeah.
But that's not the best that coffee can taste.
Yeah.
So similar, that's why I'm saying don't compare. You can do better at home. Don't compare.
Yeah.
Don't try to replicate that cafe experience at home. You have way more control in what you can do because of controlling the brewing environment.
Yeah. I think it's a very valid point. Yeah, a lot of I'm just thinking to all the cafes that I've visited, but also the one cafe I've worked behind, and now I kind of help and serve behind a small little coffee cart bar thing. It's you're optimizing for almost consistency and repeatability and taste for sure, but not taste at the expense of consistency and repeatability.
Yeah.
Which
It's
then
hard to explain.
which then kind of pigeonholes you to have to find something that is tasty but definitely repeatable, and it can't be super tasty and not repeatable.
Yes. Yeah.
Because then, well, what good is it that you serve Joe a 10 out of 10 and then Bob right behind him a 5 out of 10 because you couldn't repeat what you gave Joe, and so that's very interesting. Yeah. I think the other thing that's coming to mind is using cafes as more of like a frame of reference. Same back to the previous point, but using it as a frame of reference of saying, okay, I walked into a cafe and I got, the Jorge Rojas geisha, washed, and I really enjoyed it. It was presented well. It was great. Using that as a frame of reference to say, if I buy this bag of coffee, I can go home and get this same experience, if not better, if not dialed in with my specific nuances, with my preferences, with my ratio, with my extraction, with my brewer, with my all those things. I can actually tailor this for my personal, super personalized, tailored experience.
Exactly.
And I'm also realizing when I go to cafes and I'm buying and I'm drinking coffee, I'm oftentimes looking to buy a bag as well, many times. And I'll buy what's on bar to see if I like it. And then I'll buy a bag if I do like it. As I'm thinking about it that way, I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm just using it as a frame of reference, not as this is the end all be all, the top, when for all the variables that you mentioned, don't let the coffee actually express itself to its max. So, but I mean, there is a problem on the other hand, is if you go home and you brew a coffee and it doesn't taste the same way. And I know there's like a roaster that I really, really enjoy where I've never been able to make a coffee as good as they do behind bar.
Yeah.
And fair. Even cupping it.
Yeah.
You and I have cupped coffees from them.
Yeah.
And we said, wow, this doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
But then when you go to the cafe,
definitely know it tastes good.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably for reasons why is probably because they dial in their water. They probably have specific metrics and ballparks and some kind of magic is going on. But most of the time is if you come home and your coffee tastes worse, then you just got to work on your skill, work on your workflow, work on using the stuff that's at hand in your space to up your game, and you just using the cafe as a frame of reference.
Yeah. And with that frame of reference idea, one of the keys is just grabbing a recipe from your barista and trying to do it at home is probably not the best idea. Again, it may be a frame of reference, but replicating recipes isn't as important as replicating the actual flavor of the coffee. And in order to replicate the actual flavor of the coffee or make it even better, you have to understand the brewing variables. And you have to tweak and adjust your recipe and dial it in for your coffee environment. And that's the key, is like it's not about replicating exactly what you did or what that person did in the cafe. It's being like, oh, this coffee actually has this potential. It tastes like that. what do I know about brewing that will make it taste like that? Right. So I think that's a major key. And the other thing, this also kind of leans on a technical thing. And for some people, it might not be important. For me, it is. And we've talked about this before in the podcast is, well, excuse me, how do you adjust or how do you create a bar flow in your home coffee bar that actually elevates the experience and that makes you feel and experience coffee as if you're in a cafe? And again, you can't just, I saw this in a cafe, I'm going to make my layout on my coffee bar be the same. Well, it also doesn't make sense. You don't have a POS system. You don't have to take orders. You might not have to serve pastries out off of your coffee bar, right? So it doesn't make sense to replicate it. But the question is then, as a home barista, as a home brewer, does workflow matter? And I would argue that it really, really does. Your bar flow does matter. It actually allows you to experience and focus on the coffee rather than figuring out, hey, where did my cupping spoon go? Or where are like my cups? But for me, especially, it brings great joy when my coffee bar at home is mise en place. If I open and my water's already pre-made and all I have to do is like dump starch, it almost feels like I'm experiencing coffee before I'm actually drinking it. And it helps me focus on the consistency and the repeatability of brewing coffee rather than just like, okay, where are my tools? Like, oh shoot, that is in the way. I can't reach the kettle. Like I added an element to my coffee bar not too long ago, and that's actually an aquarium. And one of the things that it takes up a decent amount of room. One of the things I had to do is I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna move my kettle. And I usually would actually grab the kettle with my left hand, which was really bad, and transfer it to my right. So when I moved everything aside, I actually moved my brewing, my scale and my brewing station a little bit more to the left so I can move the kettle closer to my grinder and reach everything with my right hand. And does that sound crazy? Does it really matter how many steps you take behind your home bar? To me, yeah. It really does. Why? I don't think for a second about what I need to do. I just think about brewing coffee. And it creates this focus change where I'm actually able to repeat the same cup over and over again because I'm thinking about less. And I like talking about this. I feel like people listening are going to be like, dude, you're nuts. It really doesn't matter. Like pull an extra drawer. And I'm like, I mean, try it. Organize those drawers, pre-make your water, and tell me if it doesn't make your 6 a.m. pour over better.
Yeah, I think that's similar to just removing as much friction from your space as possible. I mean, if you're like tripping over cables and wires and you have stuff getting in your way, of course, it's not going to be a great experience.
No.
At that point, you're just like, I just want coffee.
Yeah. Dude, for sure. And there's a small little thing. I got a new lamp, dude, thrifted or found like secondhand this lamp that's very like Art Deco-y, like round, those bubbly lamps that you and I have loved a lot. The way it radiates light on my actual like brewing station on the carafe of where my V60 sits is the best I've ever experienced. It just makes the coffee look so good. But you know what mistake has prevented me from making? Probably one of the worst mistakes is rinsing your filter and not dumping out the water. The way that light is positioned, it reflects light off of that water. I have not made that mistake in a very long time. And I'm crazy, but it changed everything for me. It's like stuff like that. Like I'm like, oh yeah, the light on my coffee bar actually does matter. Like it's more important for me to see the actual like liquid in my vessel rather than just see the bed and not pay attention to anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm crazy, but that's you take it or leave it.
Guys, biggest takeaways: get an aquarium on your home coffee bar and get a lava lamp. Go thrift a lava lamp.
I actually recently saw lava lamps somewhere. I want to bring
great.
them back.
They're
great, dude.
That's like an early 2000s, like
so good.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, folks, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And remember, as we always say, reflect what's good.